Okay, designers, today we're going to look at how to create this simple name puzzle in Fusion 360. So ultimately, we're looking to output something like this. And if we look at it a little bit closer, we can see in the browser here that this model is made up of a component, which in this case is the actual letters. And also it is made up of a baseboard where an outline of the letters has been recessed into the wood, allowing the learner to place the letters in the space. So let's look at how to create this. Let's dive in. So I'm in a new sketch and I'm going to sketch here on the floor, as we like to say, and use a center rectangle. Starting from the origin, I make this to be about, I'll just click D for dimension. You can see here that I am going to set the dimensions after the fact. I'm using the dimension tool to do that. It's a very useful tool. So if you ever change your mind, you can just simply change the dimensions here and it will update your model. So we have a basic rectangle ready for the base. I'll click Finish Sketch, move back into this profile view, and using the Extrude command, E, I'll extrude this up by the thickness of wood that we have available in the studio, and the thickest we'll design this piece for will be 9mm. So just tap 9, press enter, we have now a piece of material. It's a good idea to round off the edges, keep it safe. We'll use F for fillet, and then go ahead and select the vertical edges, and I'm going to put in a value of about 9mm just to give it a nice round edge. I like to apply a texture to the model early, just so it gives you a better sense of how it's going to look in the end. So press A for appearance. As we saw in class, I've already bookmarked a wood material, pine. You can see it's available in my favorites. So I'm just going to drag that onto the model, and gives it a nice pine appearance. Okay, so far so good. Our next task is to create a new sketch on the surface of this object, and that's where we will spell out the name that we're going to use. So let's go ahead and do that. So again, I'm going to click New Sketch. This time I will make sure I'm touching the surface of the object, and it's going to then bring me into this view, and it's waiting for me to create a sketch. The type of sketch I'm going to create is text. So I'll simply click text, then somewhere here I'm going to just click there and put in the name. So I'm going to use spacing in the name. So I'll just put TAI, and it's going to design this for my son Ty, and just experiment with some different values of height so that it's going to fill the board. So I've got about try 120, and you can see the orientation is not set right. So you can either grab this little handle here, flip it around. Obviously we want it 180. You could type the value in there. You can also use these flip icons. I'm just going to give it a little bit more thickness, and maybe even more with Arial Black as the typeface. And I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. Alright, so now I'm going to click Finish Sketch and check it out in profile view. So we have a name here, and we want to now do a couple of things. First is we need to tell Fusion that we want these letters to be treated separately. So I'm going to right click over here in the browser on the sketch, and I'm going to click Edit Sketch. And then I'm going to right click on one of the letters, and I'm looking for the option here that says Explode Text. So right now it's a flat image, and the explosion is essentially going to make each of these letters a separate entity. So click Explode, and you can see now that the outline of the letters now becomes selectable. Okay, that's good. So I'm going to go ahead and click Finish Sketch, and I'm looking for it to move back to this home view. That's what I want. Okay, before I go further, you can see that at the moment this file is unnamed. It's saving in the background, but I'm going to force a save now. So I'm going to click Save, and it's going to ask for a name and a location. So I'm just going to call this Thai letter puzzle. And for location, if you click the little drop down arrow, I've already created project folders here. So one we have for our class is this 191 skill builders, which I've invited the class to. And you see I've already dropped in there the example you saw earlier. So I'm just going to leave it in this, I'll put it in the demo project folder for now. And I'm going to click save. And this way, it just gives me a little bit more confidence that if there is a crash or something else happens on the computer, I feel like I have a nice version of it ready to work on again. So how do we then start to manipulate the letters? So one approach I thought could be useful is to actually treat these letters as a separate component. To do that, what we can do is go up to the Create menu, and actually we're going to select each, of the, I'll choose the Extrude command, with E, and you see over here the window appears. Now, what we're looking for, first of all, is the operation. What kind of extrude do we want to make? And by default, you'll tend to see cut or join as the default operation. I'm not going to cut or join. What I want to do is actually from the letters, I want to create a new component. And so I'm going to go ahead and now tell Fusion what I want to make a new component from. So as you can see here, and then for the extrusion, I'll just start pulling it up, but I know that 15 is going to be a good size extrusion for my lettering. So I'm going to type 15, press enter. Okay, so there we have some letters, but right now the letters are actually sitting flush with the board. So we want a little recess so that the letters definitely fit into the board. And you can see now a component has been added to the browser. And what I want to do now is actually hide this component and make sure I can still see, though, the sketch of the letters that were there previously. You can see I'm toggling the visibility of that sketch. It can be useful, actually, very useful, to name your sketches and your components. So I'm just going to name the sketch letters so it's easy to understand. And this sketch is the baseboard, or the base is fine. Okay, and then this component here, I'll just call block letters. Okay. So that makes everything a bit easier to understand. So if I turn on the letters, and what I want to do now is perform one more extrusion, this time negatively, so that there is a little recess to place the letters inside. So again, I'll press E for extrude, but this time the operation is going to be a cut. and I'll select those things that I want to cut. And for the value of the extrusion, I'm going to go down -3. So just in 3mm, press turn, and you can see I have recessed the letters. Now, just to ensure a better fit for, in this case, the letter A, I also want to extrude the center here of the A. So it's coming in a bit closer. So I'll just repeat the action. So what you can do in Fusion for repetitive actions actually is you can just right click and you can choose repeat, extrude in this case. And again, I'll just make sure that the operation is a cut, and then I'll just sort of slide it in the direction I want, but type in the value -3. That way it's going to sit at the same level as the extrusion around the outside. Okay, and there we have it. One thing just sort of as a final feature, I would just turn off all the sketches, and maybe we would go in here. I'll speed this up in the video, but you might want to fillet some of these edges here just to make them a little easier for the block lettering to fit in. So you can see I'm ghosting through, and I might give that, say, a 3mm fillet. You can see it's nice and rounded there. And once that's done, so I would repeat those steps for the remaining recesses. So again, it's just F, and go ahead and all those vertical edges, we're going to just go in there and make sure they are rounded up. F for fillet. Again, we could right click and choose repeat, which is very useful. It's a 3mm. I'm pressing 3 and then let's go back home. Okay, that's looking a bit better. And then now I'm going to turn on the block lettering, and just for a bit of fun, I'll apply a paint scheme to the different letters. So here's some different paints here under Paint Glossy. So I might give the T a blue, and then just give A red, and I green. Okay, Command S, just give it a force save. Filleted the recess, but I haven't filleted the letters themselves, these components. So they won't fit very well if they are a square and going into a rounded edge. So I'm going to do that. Let's turn off this body here and get a bit closer. And with the fillet command, I'm going to also fillet these edges so that they are the same as the ones for the recess. So I used a 3mm fillet, and then I'll repeat the command for the other letters here. And just going around, touching each edge, and of course I'm using a mouse, and a mouse is definitely your best friend when it comes to using Fusion 360. Strongly recommend you use a mouse. So there you go, I've finished off that, and we'll head back home. Yeah, that's better.